Chapter 5. Moving in and meeting new neighbours. Section 1. Eventually, Arthur and Mary managed to find a 3-bedroom, semi-detached house in a quiet estate on the outskirts of Epping. It was by no means a palatial residence, but it was the best they could afford. It was in a quiet cul-de-sac, away from the traffic, but on the other hand it was quite convenient for the buses, and it was only 5 minutes away from the forest. This was a very expensive time for the Newtons, as you can imagine. Not only did they have to find the money for the deposit, but there were also solicitors' fees, surveyors' fees, and of course, this being their first unfurnished home, they had to buy at least the essential pieces of furniture. Dr. Newton helped them out with half the cash they needed for the deposit, and Mrs. Stevens, Mary's mother, said that as she and Mr. Stevens were getting a new 3-piece suite for their sitting room, Arthur and Mary could have their old one. This was a great worry off their shoulders, as furniture these days is very expensive. Nonetheless, they had to buy a bed, some floor covering, lino and carpets, a dining table and chairs, a gas cooker, and various other items for the kitchen. It seemed to Arthur that he was forever signing cheques. They had to wait rather a long time before they could move in, the reason being that the people they were buying the house from had been having some difficulty in getting into their new house. However, at last they managed to get a date for the completion of the sale, and Arthur made arrangements for the items of furniture they'd purchased to be delivered. He took a Friday off from work and fixed this day for moving in.
Well, here we are. Do you want me to carry you over the threshold?
No, thank you. I think I'm getting a bit too big for that. It was a nice thought, though.
It looks a bit bare, doesn't it?
Yes. And you can see where the Barneses' pictures have been.
Yeah.
I didn't realise the wallpaper was so faded.
Yes. We'll either have to buy pictures the same size or redecorate the hall.
Who's that at the door?
Oh. Yes?
Mr. Newton, we're from the gas board. We've brought you a new cooker.
Ah, good. Do come in. The kitchen's through here.
I see. Now, where's the gas point? Ah, there it is over there.
Well, thanks very much. Goodbye.
Cheerio, sir.
Mary, what about a cup of tea? I'll put the kettle on. Oh, no. I suddenly realised we haven't got one.
Well, you'll just have to go into Epping and get one. Oh, no, I wonder who that is.
Hello? I'm Judy Sampson from next door. We saw the van outside. I was wondering whether you'd like to come in for a quick cup of tea.
Well, isn't that strange? We were just going to make one ourselves and discovered we'd got no kettle. Yes, we'd love one, wouldn't we, Arthur?
Mm.
I'm Mary Newton, by the way, and this is my husband, Arthur.
Hello.
Well, that was lovely. We'd better be getting back now and get on with our unpacking. Oh, I know what I was going to ask you, Judy. What are our neighbours on the other side like?
Well, I expect you'll find out soon enough.
Now we must be off, really.
She seems very nice.
Yes, she's very friendly, isn't she? I wonder what she meant about our other neighbours.
I don't know, I'm sure. It sounds a bit funny, doesn't it? Well, I I've just about had it now. I really can't do another thing.
Yes, you've been working really hard today, and so have I. I think we'll get off to bed.
Now you just listen to me.
Listen a minute.
I've just about had enough of you and your behaviour.
That's right. Nag, nag, nag. That's all I ever get from you.
Oh, it's all very well for you, isn't it? Here am I.
I think I know what Judy meant now.
Doing. I've had enough about this. Look at your ruining
Section 2. This passage comes from an article by C. E. Holmes in the magazine Homes and Gardens. You must face the fact that in your inmost heart you hate the thought of moving. You want to stay forever within familiar walls hung with familiar pictures, surrounded by long-known possessions, and comforted by friendly furniture. It's easiest not to leave the rooms where your offspring passed through their enchanting childhood and maddening adolescence to a friendly but slightly distant maturity. Until suddenly one day, the distance is absolute, and they are grown up and gone. Then you find yourself living in too large a house, which consumes in its upkeep too much energy and money. When we found ourselves in this situation a few years ago, we determined to move while we still had the strength and before the emotional tentacles that the old house had wrapped around us became too powerful to be broken. Move while you can. But be sure you really want to, and do not move too often. It's an exhausting process. Your first task is to find a house that will suit you. You may not realize it at once, but after a few weeks you discover that you are really looking for a house closely resembling the one you are planning to leave. However, it must be smaller, quieter, easier to run, and more conveniently placed for transport. Not so small, though, that it will not elegantly accommodate your largest pieces of furniture, and located not too far from the neighborhood where so many friendships have been built up. At last we found one, a late Victorian terrace cottage in a street where the houses, all small, range from late 18th to mid-20th century. It was near enough to where we wanted to live. It had no basement, which was a great convenience for aging legs. There were only 2 floors above ground level, one for ourselves and one where friends, children, and grandchildren could spread themselves when they came to stay. Each floor had 2 rooms. There was a built-out kitchen on the ground floor with the bathroom above it. On the debit side, the house was in a terrible state of repair. The walls were damp, the woodwork crumbling, the roof plainly faulty. It was icy cold. It could do, if. And there were a great many ifs, to which the answer could only be provided by surveyor and architect. Oral Practice 1. Practice saying these sentences from the dialogue.
The hall. Or redecorate the hall. The same size or redecorate the hall. Buy pictures the same size or redecorate the hall. We'll either have to buy pictures the same size or redecorate the hall. Yes, we'll either have to buy pictures the same size or redecorate the hall. A cup of tea. What about a cup of tea? Mary, what about a cup of tea? Got one. We haven't got one. I've suddenly realized we haven't got one.
Get one. Into Epping and get one. Have to go into Epping and get one. Well, you'll just have to go into Epping and get one.
A quick cup of tea. Come in for a quick cup of tea. Whether you'd like to come in for a quick cup of tea. I was wondering whether you'd like to come in for a quick cup of tea.
Oral Practice 2. Listen to the dialogue and then take the part of A.
How did the move go then?
Well, as you can probably imagine, we're still in utter chaos.
Why? What happened?
Well, the first thing was that the removal people got the date mixed up.
Oh, no. What on earth did you do?
First, we rang them up, and they swore blind we'd asked them to come the following Friday.
My God. How did you manage then?
We eventually persuaded them we were in the right, because we'd got it in black and white on a letter they'd sent us.
Did they come round immediately?
Did they, hell? We had to wait for over 4 hours.
How awful.
Yes, and it was a sweltering hot day. And we couldn't even make a cup of tea because the gas and water had been cut off.
Now wind the tape back to the beginning of this dialogue, and this time speak at the same time as A. Remember that A speaks first. Now here's the dialogue again, and this time you take the part of A. Begin now.
Well, as you can probably imagine, we are still in utter chaos. Well, the first thing was that the removal people got the date mixed up. First, we rang them up, and they swore blind we'd asked them to come the following Friday. We eventually persuaded them we were in the right, because we'd got it in black and white on a letter they'd sent us. Did they, hell? We had to wait for over 4 hours. Yes, and it was a sweltering hot day, and we couldn't even make a cup of tea because the gas and water had been cut off.
Oral Practice 3. Listen to the passage, which is about noisy neighbours, and then answer the questions in your book. I once lived on the top story of an old Victorian house in a largish town on the south coast of England. The house had 4 stories. A basement, which was occupied by a middle-aged man and his wife and teenage son. I'm not quite sure what he was, but I think he must have been some sort of commercial traveller. The ground floor was let to a youngish married couple who were very quiet indeed, and if we saw them once a month, well, that's probably an overestimate. The next floor up was occupied by a young couple with a baby, who were in similar circumstances to ourselves. We were quite young, and at the time also had a baby of roughly the same age as our neighbours below. Because of the similarity of our situations, we were very friendly, especially the wives. The thing I remember most about living there is the noise one had to suffer. At the back of the house there was a sort of club, and on summer evenings, when everybody had their windows open, there used to be deafening sounds of what might loosely be described as music, persisting until the small hours of the morning. We complained about it several times to the management, and even to the police, but nothing was ever done about it. Having a young baby for the first time also interrupted our sleep, and if we weren't awakened by our own baby, we were often woken up by the baby immediately below us. On one particularly hot night, I was awakened by our neighbour in the basement flat shouting, "Can't you keep that bloody baby quiet?" Apparently, he had been awakened by the baby below us, but I was jolted out of my sleep by his shouting. I hadn't heard the baby on that occasion. When our friends below us moved away to another town, the flat immediately below us was occupied by a rather miserable young woman with a little girl of about 3 years old. By this time, we ourselves had 2 children of about 4 and 3. Naturally, our children used to run around the living room, and as our carpet was very thin, the sound of their running about came through to the flat below. Our new neighbour used to bang on the ceiling, shout through the letterbox, and register her disapproval of this at least 4 times a day. The day we moved out finally produced the strongest reaction from the lady downstairs, because we had taken up the thin carpet in preparation for moving. We said to ourselves that we hoped she'd get some really noisy neighbours as we shut our door for the last time. Oral Practice 4. Describe habits which you've had for some time. Listen to the examples first.
Do you drive a car?
Yes, I've driven a car for some years, actually.
Yes, I've driven a car for some years, actually.
Do you smoke?
Yes, I've smoked for some years, actually.
Yes, I've smoked for some years, actually. Now, you go on in the same way.
Do you drive a car?
Yes, I've driven a car for some years, actually.
Do you smoke?
Yes, I've smoked for some years, actually.
Does your mother live in Monte Carlo?
Yes, she's lived in Monte Carlo for some years, actually.
Do they sell wine in that shop?
Yes, they've sold wine for some years, actually.
Do your children speak English?
Yes, they've spoken English for some years, actually.
Do they have discos in the village hall?
Yes, they've had discos for some years, actually.
Do you watch the gardening programs on television?
Yes, I've watched the gardening programs for some years, actually.
Does your boss give you a Christmas bonus?
Yes, he's given me a Christmas bonus for some years, actually. That's the end of Oral Practice 4. Oral Practice 5. Express surprise using the present perfect tense in the negative interrogative form. Listen to the examples first. My tooth hurts.
Haven't you seen the dentist?
Haven't you seen the dentist?
Oh, damn, the car's stopped.
Haven't you bought any petrol?
Haven't you bought any petrol?
Now you go on. My tooth hurts.
Haven't you seen the dentist?
Oh, damn, the car's stopped.
Haven't you bought any petrol?
They've cut the phone off.
Haven't you paid the bill?
I'm soaking wet.
Haven't you brought your umbrella?
I don't know the football results.
Haven't you bought a newspaper?
The flowers are dying.
Haven't you watered the garden?
It's cold in here.
Haven't you lit the fire?
I've still got a headache.
Haven't you taken an aspirin?
That's the end of Oral Practice 5. Oral Practice 6. In this drill, you must choose between the present perfect tense and the simple past. Listen to the examples first.
I like Shakespeare's plays.
Yes, he wrote some good plays, didn't he?
Yes, he wrote some good plays, didn't he?
I like Graham Greene's novels.
Yes, he's written some good novels, hasn't he?
Yes, he's written some good novels, hasn't he?
Now you go on in the same way.
I like Shakespeare's plays.
Yes, he wrote some good plays, didn't he?
I like Graham Greene's novels.
Yes, he's written some good novels, hasn't he?
I like Christopher Wren's buildings.
Yes, he designed some good buildings, didn't he?
I like Leonardo da Vinci's pictures.
Yes, he painted some good pictures, didn't he?
I like Mary Quant's clothes.
Yes, she's designed some good clothes, hasn't she?
I like Ken Russell's films.
Yes, he's directed some good films, hasn't he?
I like Beethoven's music.
Yes, he composed some good music, didn't he?
I like Frank Sinatra's songs.
Yes, he's sung some good songs, hasn't he?
That's the end of Oral Practice 6. Oral Practice 7. Dictation. First, cover up the passage and listen, please.
When Michael was a boy, he lived in a semi-detached house in a suburb of London. It was a very pleasant neighbourhood of tree-lined avenues, small parks here and there, and well-kept gardens. Michael went to the local primary school, which was very modern. He liked the teachers, and on the whole, he had a very happy life. The one snag was the family who lived next door. There were a lot of noisy children who often used to throw stones at him. Their father usually used to come home late and then began to quarrel with his wife. Michael was very glad when he looked out of his bedroom window one morning and saw a removal van outside the neighbour's house.
Now you'll hear the passage again, and this time you must write down what you hear.
When Michael was a boy, he lived in a semi-detached house in a suburb of London. It was a very pleasant neighbourhood. Of tree-lined avenues, small parks here and there, and well-kept gardens. Michael went to the local primary school, which was very modern. He liked the teachers, and on the whole, he had a very happy life. The one snag was the family who lived next door. There were a lot of noisy children who often used to throw stones at him. Their father usually used to come home late, and then began to quarrel with his wife. Michael was very glad when he looked out of his bedroom window one morning and saw a removal van outside the neighbour's house.
Now here's the passage again.
When Michael was a boy, he lived in a semi-detached house in a suburb of London. It was a very pleasant neighbourhood of tree-lined avenues, small parks here and there, and well-kept gardens. Michael went to the local primary school, which was very modern. He liked the teachers, and on the whole he had a very happy life. The one snag was the family who lived next door. There were a lot of noisy children who often used to throw stones at him. Their father usually used to come home late and then began to quarrel with his wife. Michael was very glad when he looked out of his bedroom window one morning and saw a removal van outside the neighbour's house.
Now check the dictation in your book. That's the end of Chapter 5.